Welcome everyone to the actual class one. Now that you have everything installed from your prerequisites, we can start moving into the actual build of the website. If you're seeing this video and you have not installed all of the prerequisites, please watch that video first because you will not be able to build anything if you just dive right in. So you need to make some installations and make sure your computer is set up. So I'll provide a link to that in the description. So by the end of this class, we'll have a live website on a real URL. I'm not going to promise you that it'll be completely done. You'll need to do a lot of work refining it and setting it up to your liking after this class, but you will have the structure and a scaffolding of the landing page by the end of this class, and good direction on how to make it a finished product. This is not a coding class, just to reiterate. It's not a design class. It's not how does AI work. We are actually going to build a website using Claude Code here, and you will have a deliverable to work on by the end of this class. So I said this in the prerequisites, but it's worth reiterating again here. Now that we're using AI and Claude Code, there's a little bit of a mentality shift that I think everybody should follow, which is that start talking to Claude as if you're talking to a person or an employee. Don't go back to this original way of thinking that we have of how do I do this, how do I learn the UI, and then going around and trying to research how to do something. Claude can explain it to you. You just ask the how do I question to Claude, and it'll either do it for you or it'll explain to you how to do it and walk you through it. And it's like sitting next to a person where you're both learning together. Claude taught me almost everything I know, so it's a great teacher and you should leverage it as such. So as far as the actual model we'll be using to code, Anthropic has different models. Opus is the one we primarily want to use for coding. It is the most advanced model that is out right now, and it does a good job of reasoning in more complex tasks and delegating things to its sub-agents and things like that. The next one lower is Sonnet, and that's really good if like you're trying to get a question answered or a quick ChatGPT question. It's very fast and it'll answer your question, but it's not so great for coding. And there's one below that which isn't really relevant until we get to the agent class towards the end of this course. So the way that we check is when we go into our Claude Code, you can hit this little slash here, and the model is right here, and if it says Opus, you're good. And if you want to switch it, just click it, and there's a lot of other ones. Opus is the one we'll be using. Fable was just released. It's only going to be available for a short time before it's paid. It's really, really advanced, but it's a little too advanced for what we're doing, so it's not completely necessary or worth the price. Opus is where we want to live for the purposes of this class. So the other thing that you want to just keep in mind as you do this is sessions. So don't worry too much about it now. I'll just introduce the concept. Is you don't want to do multiple topics or multiple coding runs in the same conversation with Claude. What'll happen is it'll accumulate a lot of context and a really, really long conversation. And so what it'll do is it'll eat up a lot of your usage, but not only that, it'll start to get really confused and not perform as well. So what you want to do is after you're done with, let's say, setting up the landing page, we'll create a new session, which is just creating another tab over here, and we start fresh with whatever we want to do. Claude does a good job of maintaining context, and there are a lot of tips and tricks I'll give throughout the course on how to do that, so it doesn't have to do that much research. But the general idea is like for every new topic or new build you're trying to do, start a new session and you'll have a much better Claude experience. So now we're moving a little bit into GitHub here. And so GitHub has a lot of terminology, which is just different words for what we already do with our type of documents. So Git, which is the basis of GitHub, is a technology that is basically tracking changes. That's GitHub's entire purpose, is to track changes, much like you would in Microsoft Word, but it's for your whole project. And that allows you to go back to different points in time, see what changed since your last save, and really figure out a history if you need it, if something goes wrong. And you can also see an evolution of files as a result. The repo or the repository is basically your project folder. So it stores all the code, it's all of the project code, and it's just, it's a huge folder with all of your projects, basically. A commit is a save. So as we code and make changes, it's not saving. It'll save progress in the sense of if you close your computer and open it back up again, you're not going to completely lose it. But it doesn't save in the sense of if something goes wrong, there's no point in time to go back. So what you want to do is you want to periodically commit to create snapshots that will save over a long time horizon, and you can go back to any of these commits as a point in time. So if you need to undo something, or you break something, or you even need to do research, you're going back to the commits, which are different points in time. A push is when you send whatever you've been working on to GitHub. And so GitHub lives on the cloud. All of the code that you're doing lives on your computer. So you're basically syncing with the cloud by pushing. And so what happens is when you push, if your computer breaks or something goes completely wrong, you have the cloud backup and you can just pull it down whenever you want, which is the next term, is going from the cloud to your computer is a pull. And then lastly, kind of similarly to a pull, is a clone, and it's just a fresh project from whatever GitHub has. So you can actually, there are a lot of open source skills and things that you can take a look at, and you can clone them to your computer, which means just pull it down identically as it is, and then edit it however you want and have as your own project that you can manipulate and do what you want with it. So the first thing we want to do before we start coding is get GitHub set up to receive the project that we'll be creating. And then what we also want to do is link it to Vercel. And so basically what we'll be doing is going to Claude Code and say that we want to create a repo for this project, and we want it to be private, meaning that the public cannot see or access it, and the only people who can are those that we explicitly give permission. See, and this is where it uses the terminology of it created a GitHub repo and it pushed, meaning it sent it to GitHub, it's created. So now we have a backup repository, or basically a Google Drive folder for code that lives in the cloud. And so now we want to create a Vercel deployment linked to that GitHub repo. So basically what we're doing is we're creating Vercel to hold the website and launch it to go public. And it's automatically linked to the GitHub we just created. So as we push things to update on GitHub, it'll automatically update in Vercel and go live. So that means every time we push to GitHub, it goes live to our site. So in this context and this stage of our development, all of the experimenting that we're doing is on our computer, and when we push, it goes live to a website and live to the public in the human readable form of the website. Now, the good news is for this stage, it created a made-up link in the public sphere, so nobody's going to find it. There's no one really going to access it unless you give it that link. And at the very end, what we'll do is we'll move it over to your domain once you're done and ready for it to go live to the public and be linked to your domain. And then I'll explain how to keep your development separate from going live and still be able to back up towards the end. Okay, cool. So we're all set up there. So this is a perfect example of a new session, right? So we're done here. Everything is set up, and see, as you can see, it's this really long link. It's kind of made up. So there's no real risk if our website goes public while it's still in process, since nobody's going to ever find that link. And so now that we're done with everything there, what we want to do is open a new sessions for when we're ready to code. So it's a fresh slate and a fresh start. I already explained this, but just to reiterate, like where we are now is everything that's local on your computer and all the coding that we're doing is kind of practice and development, and it's not really going live. But once we push to GitHub, is basically publishing it, and people can start to see it. So one of the things we installed in the prerequisites is called Impeccable. It's a set of skills, and it's specifically designed for website and UI design. So if you are designing a mobile app or anything that is user facing, Impeccable is what's going to make Claude Code do it really, really well. Claude Code by itself can do it, absolutely, but it'll fall into some pitfalls that make it look like AI built it. It's not that creative, and it's not really great at a lot of design orientation and design philosophy. And Impeccable boosts those skills, which is why they're called skills, so that way it's really well done. So this is going to be true of any project you ever want to use Impeccable. The first thing you need to do is set Impeccable up with this command impeccable init. And what it basically does is it creates two documents. It creates a product document and a design document. So it's a structured interview that basically asks, what are we building? What is the design philosophy you want? What is the aesthetic you want? And creates a set of context that it will always reference as you continue to build, so it knows what colors to use, what mood to have, what aesthetic you want, and has an understanding of the entire project, so that way it can execute to your liking and to your project really, really well. Now, this is project specific, so if I were to do another website, I'd want to run this command again, so that way it has the context for that other project. And it's really important to run this before you start building. So what's also important to know here is the more information that you give it, the better it will perform. So you can give it your logo, you can give it your brand kit, you can give it colors, any assets you have. Give it everything, and it'll build it and figure out what to do with it. And whatever it's missing, it'll ask you. It's a structured interview. And so what you do is you run impeccable init, do not hit enter, and then just start data dump everything in your head onto that text box. What your business does, what your story is, what your vibe is, sites you love that you like their aesthetic and vibe, everything. Just dump everything you can possibly think of, and the more information you have, the better it'll do, and it'll fill in the gaps. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the command impeccable, and then I'm going to type init. And so the general way to run all impeccable commands is the same thing, is instead of init, we'll run different commands, but this is basically the premise. And then we're just going to data dump everything here. So I'm doing my scuba diving mobile app, so I'll just write it all out. But first, before I forget, what I want to do is I want to give it as much information as I can. So what I have here are a bunch of assets that I used in my original site. So I'm just going to drag them all in here, and it'll find them. So okay, so to summarize, basically what I did is I described what my scuba diving app is, which is a pre-dive logistics app that helps organize all the gear you have when you go on a scuba diving trip. Make sure you don't forget anything. Keep track of your dives, a travel planner, and a bunch of other features really specific to scuba diving. One thing I highlighted here for it to know, which was good context, is the website is currently live at this website, scubazanapp.com, and we're doing a rebuild of that website. We want to own it completely. I originally built it on Squarespace and got stuck in like a lot of the Squarespace templates. And quite frankly, now doing it this way, we can build something a lot more beautiful. And we'll be able to own everything end to end. So this is the original Squarespace website. It's pretty basic. Look, I'm just using emojis and like I have these templates and it's fine. It does the job and like, but it's not great. It's not that engaging. It has a lot of room for improvement. These are very basic tables. And the other thing is I'm paying for this. So if I do it this way and completely own it, then I'll have it for free and I can make it even better. So then we hit enter and it's just going to start going through the process of figuring out what's around, and then based on the information it has, it's going to ask me a bunch of questions. Okay, so it's done, and as you can see, it created the product document as well as the design document. These are the two most important documents for Impeccable specifically, and this is what houses everything that is part of your brand and its build. So the one question that comes up sometimes is, what do you want to code it in? I usually use Next.js, but you can kind of pick any language. If you use Next.js, the animations are pretty great. It's basically a web app at that point, just presented as a website. But it doesn't really matter, and you can always ask Claude which one to do. So now that this is all done, I want to save this so that this is a point we can always come back to. So what I'm going to tell it is commit and push, so that way it commits and saves everything as a snapshot. And you know it's committed when all of this text over here turns white. And then it'll push it to GitHub so I have a backup. And so this will now be a save point that I can always come back to. So even if everything goes completely haywire, I can always come back to this exact starting point. All my design documentation is done, and I can start fresh. See, just turned all white. So now we're good, we're clean and ready to go. Great. So we don't need that anymore. All right, so we're done here. So this is the general process that I use in designing a website, and I think of it like a funnel. Is the first pass that it's going to build, which I'll show you the command in a second, is not going to be right, quite frankly. It's going to be okay at best, but what you're really just looking for in that first pass is the aesthetic and the vibe. Does the aesthetic and the coloring and just the font selection and just kind of general high level vibe feel directionally correct? And then if not, we're going to go back and edit it and like reevaluate and walk it through the changes we want to make. But once that's done, then we're going to start going section by section, we'll start reviewing all the sections and make sure that the structure is right. So we're all going to start with the hero, but then like, what are the sections that follow it? Are they in the right order, and are they what we want on the page? So these two can be done together with this Impeccable shape command, which I'll show you in a second. And then once we have the general outline done, then we're going to go into each individual section and do them one by one. And so I'll do the hero section on this video, but I'll leave it up to you guys to go do the rest of your sections. So the first thing we'll do in each section is get the layout. And does it look right? Does it have the right elements? Does the spacing look right? And then we'll work on the copy. What is the actual text within that section? And so we'll alternate between these two because they're a little interdependent. But we'll do this section by section until the entire page is done. And then once we have the entire page done, then we can start doing micro interactions and animations and things like that. It's better done holistically, so that way it looks like an entire page that's cohesive. If you do them individually, they could start conflicting. You could add too much animation. It could slow the page down. So it's best to do this step once the entire page is done. And so you're going to run through this process for every page in your build. It's a bit of work, but a lot of websites don't have that many pages, so you can get it done pretty quickly. So just to reiterate, what we'll do to get this done in a first pass is we'll use Impeccable Shape. This one is a little bit more question-oriented. It tries to gather how you think about your page and how you think about the sections that you want in it. You can do Impeccable Craft, and this one's just going to jump straight in and build the landing page for you based on the information that it has. Either are totally fine. A lot of times it has enough information to make a pretty good guess at the sections. I personally just like to go through a little bit of an interview first, but it doesn't really matter. And like I said, the final result of this is not going to be right. So we're going to iterate on it. We're just checking the vibe, and then I'll show you how to improve it once it's built. So what we'll do is we'll go down here, and then we'll start a new session, so that way it's a clean slate. And then we'll do Impeccable Shape Landing Page. So the way it works is the command is shape, and then you got to pick the page that you want to do. And you could just write whatever the name of the page is. So it's going to gather all this context, and then we're going to go through a series of questions so it knows what to build. So what a little trick here is some questions it just doesn't know the answer to, and you can hit other and give it specific direction. So what it's asking me here is like, where are the links that you want me to point to? I'm kind of lazy. I don't want to go find them, so I'm telling it to pull it from my existing website. You can do this however you want, but I'm lazy. Okay, so this is the result of the shape, is a design brief going through what it's going to build, the direction, and all the information it needs. Here's the outline of the sections that it's going to build. So in addition to looking at the aesthetic once it's done, we now know what the sections are. You can edit directly here, and so that way to get ahead of any issues you see in the build. For me, this looks good, so I'll just say go ahead and build. Okay, so something interesting happened here, which I think is worth flagging, is it was going through the build and it noticed that one of the fonts that I had as part of my brand package is overused. So it's something that a lot of brands use. It's something that AI typically uses when it's doing a build. So what I said to it basically was, hey, if this is overused, this is an opportunity to make it better. So don't lock in this font, even though it's in the design brief. Let's take a look at what other fonts we can use. So one way to counter this before we get to the state, as if I missed it, would be in the init command we did in the beginning. Just say, hey, there's flexibility on all of these branding kit items. If there's anything overused or that we want to change, let's change it now. Optional to do that, obviously, but it gave me a list of 4 or 5 fonts. And I don't know fonts. I don't know what they look like. So I asked it to build me an HTML so that I can compare it. But the thing is like it built it and it's here, but like this doesn't tell me anything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, can you launch it in my browser so I can see it? And so what it'll do is it'll open it up in Chrome so I can actually take a look and pick one. So these are all of the options. So it has this one. And so it'll let you flip through, and I'm looking at the body here to figure out which one I want to do. Robato's the original one that it said was overused, and it's giving it to me as a comparison. So now I basically have to pick one and tell it so that way we can change the design document. And then it even has a little recommended here. Okay, so I think Mullish is good, so we're going to go with that. So I'll go back here and then say, let's do Mullish. And now I have a new font. Okay, so it actually launched it for me. It doesn't actually normally do that. But I'll come back to the website in a second. So what it does is explain to me everything that it just did. And so in order to see it, this is the web link you use. A local host is just basically a server or a Versal on your computer. What's really great about it is that it can launch your website, and then as you have edits and changes, all you have to do is hit refresh if it doesn't already change in real time. So here's a summary of everything it built, all the sections, all the craft notes, and so like some disclaimers, but like the footer links and things like that, those are pages we actually have to build, so they're just placeholders for right now, and just something we have to do later. So to see the website we built, like this is what it is. It's a great start. And like I said, the point here is that this is just a first pass to get the scaffolding up. So the two things we care about are the aesthetic and the vibe primarily. That's the first thing we want to nail. And then we want to make sure the sections and the information are right. And once that's done, I consider this first pass done, and we'll start diving into the individual sections. So as of right now, this is a great start. I like the whole background. The little animation it put here is a great one. Things that I'll change though is like it feels very cramped on the left side. There's a lot of open space over here. But again, that's not the point of this exact checkpoint. That's just a note for myself of, okay, in the next phase, what do I want to do? So if we start scrolling down, so as you can see, there is a huge performance issue. These scrolls are very slow, and I think it probably has something to do with all the images and the weight of this. But this is the perfect time for this initial pass to rip all of that out and figure out what's wrong with it. I like to take notes as I do it. So the first issue is the scroll. It's way too slow. It's way too laggy. I don't exactly know why, and I don't have to know why. I just have to tell it what's wrong, and it'll figure it out. Okay, so that's noted, and then let's see, so... Okay, so like I skip a section as a result here, but whatever, we've already noted it. So again, we're just looking for vibe and section. So how it works, and the gear checklist, okay, these are generally the right vibes, but one thing it did was it put all of these background images I have as if they were screenshots. And so that's not something I'm going to fix now, but when I get to this section, that is something I will fix. Again, just aesthetic. The font looks good. The color scheme's good. It looks like it's got the right sections. And so the vibe and the structure is generally right. So once we fix this scroll, we can move on to actually fixing the actual sections. So that's the primary thing. Okay, see, I'm just going to pick the recommended one and we'll see how it is, and then we can iterate further. It was a remove one or both, and so we'll remove one. If we have to remove both because it still doesn't work, then at least we tried. Okay, let's see if it's fixed. And it is. Perfect. So basically what it tried to do is it tried to get really fancy. It tried to add a native scroll package that was a little too much and it didn't perform well. So we removed it, it fixed it, and the site is a lot cleaner and smoother now. And so now re-looking at it as an evaluation, again, just looking at structure and aesthetic, this generally feels like what I want out of it. So we're good here. So step one is done. The site is built. So what we want to do is say, okay, it's fixed. Let's commit and push. Because now we have a save point of the initial build is done. The aesthetic is right. Let's just commit it and then push it so we have the backup. And then we're ready to start going section by section. So while it does all of that fun stuff, we'll go back to the deck. So these two steps are done. So from here, we'll start going out the layouts within each section. So I'll do the hero with you guys just so you can see how it's done, but then you'll just duplicate it for every single section. So we just ran the shape command and the build. So all accomplished, done. And here's the formula of how Impeccable works, is all of these are the command. And so Impeccable, Boulder, Animate, Overdrive, and then whatever you want to work on. So if it's the landing page, a widget, a new page, whatever it is. So Impeccable, Boulder, and Overdrive is usually where you want to go next. The opposite of Boulder and Overdrive is quieter and calmer. And so we have this starting point, but honestly, it looks like SAS. It looks really basic, and it's not that interesting. So we're going to use Boulder to really just beef it up and make it more visually interesting and add some creative elements to it and make it really stand out, because this is the hero section. This is the first thing people see, so we really want this to stick out and be something that's kind of the wow moment of the website that really is on brand. And so we may have to run this multiple times in order to get it to where we want to be, because Boulder only goes so far. If after 2 or 3 times you run Impeccable Boulder and it doesn't get you to where you want to be, Overdrive is something I'll usually try. But the thing with Overdrive is use it very, very carefully and sparingly. Overdrive ignores all performance issues and just goes maximum creativity and just tries to really push the WoW envelope. And so the scroll issue I just faced is a perfect example of something that Overdrive might install, is that, yes, there is a smooth scrolling that it really would have been a really cool effect for the entire website, but obviously it didn't perform well, so it went too far. It tried to do too much. So be careful with it. This is why you do commits, is you can commit and then go do an overdrive pass, and if it just completely sucks and breaks everything, just go back to the commit, tell Claude, hey, let's go back to the previous commit, and it'll undo all those changes, and you'll be back to where you started before you started the overdrive. So I'll walk you through that in a minute, but just to go through these other ones. Animate and Delight are what I talked about in this phase here of the details in craft. They're worth running because they add a lot of really cool effects. But the thing is I would not run them until you have all of your copy done in each section and your layout looks the way it is. This is the final pass that you want to run on the entire site as a cohesive element. And so what Animate will do is add motion or micro interactions to things that you have. So to show you on my Venice threads, an Animate would be like, hey, let's make the bird move when you hover over it. Or maybe that like this little label will move when you hover over it. That's what Animate adds. And then Delight adds like small surprising details that like are really clever. It'll add Easter eggs, and some stuff is really, really cool but barely noticeable, so it's up to you if you want to keep it. And so they're worth running, Animate and then Delight. They kind of overlap a little bit, so like don't get hung up in the both of them. I run both just to see what gets presented, and then you can choose from the options that it gives you. Okay, so like I said, things will break. That the scroll in this first thing broke. It didn't work totally fine. So how did we fix it? I didn't know the issue or why it was happening, so I just told Claude, hey, the scroll's broken. Like, let's fix it. And it took 2 tries for it to figure out, and it ultimately decided to remove it, but we got there and it was fixed. So this is just to display, like, hey, describe the issue, be specific, and it'll try to fix it for you. So before I go through all of this, I'll show you what it's like to go through Boulder. So we're all committed, everything's white, it's done, it has it. So now we'll do a new session. So we want to work on the hero section, and like I said, it looked kind of sass and basic, so we're going to say impeccable Boulder hero section of the landing page, be specific. But then it helps to not just stop here. Describe what's wrong with it. Describe what your issues are with it. And like where you want to go. What's the direction? The more direction that you give it, the better it can tailor the experience. So basically I said, what I said to you guys is it's a nice background, but it really needs to stand out and we need to really differentiate here. So it may not hit it on the first try. We may have to run it 2 or 3 times or even go to overdrive, but we'll see what it comes up with and we'll see how it does. Okay, so it's done finally. Reason it took so long is it kept running into this issue with its screenshots, and it had to figure out a way around it, and why it wasn't getting what it was expecting. But we didn't do anything with that. It figured out itself. It saved the memory, so it knows not to make that mistake again. But let's see how it did. So launch it in my browser. Okay, so automatically a lot better than where we were. So that's the beauty of this Boulder. I mean, there's some contrast issue with my logo here, but as a hero section, it is significantly better. And so the scrolling revealed the actual links. So this is on the right track. Maybe I'll have some copy adjustments and a little things like that, but definitely a huge improvement. And so as far as this is where we were. And then if you even look from where we started, this is the Squarespace version. So going from here to here, we're clearly on the right track to a significantly better website. Okay, so just to bring it back to the process, I highly suggest reading the Impeccable Docs. It has a full list of commands. There are a ton in here, so it'll be very useful to you. But we did the craft. That was the initial landing page build, and the Boulder is the push further. So this is the section I'm in right now. I'm not going to finish it right now with you guys. It'll take several hours, and I don't want to upload that. But then now, once I'm happy with this section, then I'll start working on the copy. And so we'll talk through, and that's easy. It's just what is the phrasing, what is the orientation of the copy, all of that. So this is the creative pass and includes animate and everything, and we'll get this whole site creatively and copy done end to end. But then we have to move into the technical pass. And so this is stuff that it runs in the background. And so it'll optimize for performance issues, make sure that accessibility works, the code quality is high, the performance loads quickly, there are no issues on the back end when it's serving your website. And it'll handle all of it for you. You just need to run it on each page or even your site as a whole. And Harden is about security. We have the security installer agent, so this Harden shouldn't have to do too much more, but it's good to run both of them. And as long as you're not hooking up to database or collecting personal information, it's pretty low risk. But if you are collecting personal information, it'll flag it and like kind of create safeguards around it. So just follow those directions. Then once you're optimized and hardened, then you want to run audit and critique. I will say for these two, you do not have to listen to everything that it says. These are extremely detailed, and it's going to flag a lot of things that really are not that important. I ignore half of the stuff that critique comes out with because I got the site to where I like it. So just filter through it. It's good just to cover the base and see what you do and don't care about that it flags. But it's kind of optional. And then lastly, the very, very, very last thing you do is impeccable polish. And that basically goes through all of your website and all of your code, makes sure all the margins are consistent, the font sizes are consistent, the spacing is consistent, and it just does all of that nitpicky little stuff. It just makes it really, really clean. It's always the very last step for every page. You don't have to finish your whole website to run polish. You could just do it for the individual page, and when you run it, you know it's done. And then you commit and you push, and it's live. But again, it's on your Vercel artificial domain, so it's not live in your domain, but I'll touch on that in a second. So these are all the pages you pretty much need to build, and you run through the same process with each of these. Your home and landing page, your about, services, all of these different pages, you run the same process. You start with shape or craft, you go through the aesthetic, then you go section by section, copy, polish, technical run, all of that stuff. And so I know the landing page is really heavy and it feels like it takes long, but a lot of these pages are quite short. So policy and terms, you could knock out each of these in 30 minutes, no problem. Contact form, probably another 30 minutes. So don't get intimidated by the number. The home page is where you're going to spend the most amount of time and do the most work. And we do that one first just to get everything oriented, and it's used as a design reference for the other pages. And then depending on what part of your business, you may have these other custom pages. You don't have to think of these. What I usually do is I look at a competitor or tell Claude to look at a competitor and list all the pages and then create a document that's basically a checklist of, hey, let's go through each of these and check them off as we're done. Yeah, so that just reiterates this, like, hey, look at the competitor. What does their site have? Let's just make sure we marry all the pages. Claude can do most of that work for you. So your site right now is on a domain that looks like this. And so if you already have a domain, it's easy to switch over. You'll just go to Vercel, go to your project, and then there's a domains and add existing, and Vercel will walk you through how to move it over. It's super simple. Sometimes it takes a couple hours, not because of anything you have to do. It's just the back end has to propagate all the information and stuff like that. The total setup time is usually 10 to 15 minutes. If you do not have a domain yet, you can buy it directly from Vercel, and Vercel will do all of the work for you. A domain is usually $12 to $15 a year. They're very cheap. But then once this is all done, then when you go to yourdomain.com, you are getting the site we built in VS Code through this class. So it's a pretty easy switch over. It takes 10 to 15 minutes. Don't do it until you're done with all of the pages, because that's where the public will go when they go to your domain. And then lastly, once your site is live, the in progress and live switches a little bit. You can still do everything locally, but it doesn't necessarily back up if you don't push it to GitHub. So what you can do is tell Claude to set up a backup branch, call it work in progress or whatever. So that way, when you're trying to get a backup, but it's still work in progress, GitHub can still hold it, but it won't be launched on Vercel. So a branch is basically just a copy of your site that you're actively working on. And that pretty much wraps up the website build class. If this is beneficial to you, you like the way that this was done, I have a series of other classes that I'm uploading here. This will change as more classes are added, but basically, to walk you through it, this was how to build your website, obviously. But your website is only as good as the performance and work you do on it. So you're going to want to build a dashboard that is custom to the way that you think and ingest information. Google Analytics throws a lot of metrics at you, and it's really hard to understand what to do with all of that information. So that class is really catered around how do I build a dashboard that manipulates all of that data and presents it to me in a way that I can actually, one, understand, and two, make decisions off of. So really useful for performance. After that, we plug in SEO and AEO. So how did you get your website to rank and start building organic traffic? And how do I get ChatGPT to start citing me and referencing me when people are using it? And then we move off of the website a bit and start going into business operations. So automations, how do you build things on your computer that can do things for you? So program it to ingest your email, weather, news, any tasks you have for the day, and give you a morning briefing every morning. Or anything else you want to automate that you can think of, this is the baseline of how to get it to do that for you. So that way you can start offloading a lot of that busy work that is pretty annoying to do every day. And then that will naturally lead into agents. So not only do you have these automations done, but now you have an AI bot that you can talk to and execute tasks for you. So it can say things like, based on my morning briefing, update my to-do list for the day. Switch things around on my to-do list, move some meetings around for me, and it can do all of that work for you. So it's like having a virtual assistant. And agents are not only that use case, they can be built for anything that you want it to do. I run a social media agent that handles my Instagram, for example. And then lastly, now that you have your business off the ground and you have your business operations optimized, I have a go-to-market class powered by my StratEngine product that really helps you understand how to grow your business, how to enter new markets, how to add product lines, how to analyze what to do with your current state of the business to get it to continue to grow. So thanks a lot, and hope you enjoyed this class.